Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of Hands Across the Water, the intergenerational, intercontinental Beatles and solo podcast. We are so pleased that you are here for another edition, a very exciting one at that. We'll get into all of it, but first, I ought to introduce the people kind enough to join me for this episode. My co-host from all the way in New Jersey, across the Hudson, Andy Nicholes.
Hello, Kyle. How you doing, buddy?
I am great. Very excited to be here. And you will soon know why. You'll soon know why. And now, of course, to welcome us, to join us for the show, esteemed Beatles and solo rock author, Luca Perasi. How are you?
Thank you, Kyle, Andy, for the invitation to your show. Second time for me. I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Hope you too. And so let's dive into this new episode.
Yes.
You can see in the background my screen an album that we are going to dissect today together.
Dissect is completely the right word. So on Hands Across the Water, we have been doing a lot of breaking news. Pretty much for the past month, there has just been a deluge of news every single day, whether it's Power to the People and all the conversation around that, whether it's anthology or whether it's this Wings compilation, which is a topic for another video. Andy talked about it on his Two Likes channel. But I'm excited to now take a break, take a step back from all of this news and just do a show on something that we love. For me personally, Press to Play, Paul's 1986 masterpiece, is my favorite album by any artist. And the fact that we have Luca here to join us, who just wrote his book about Press to Play to help break it down, is a huge honor and pleasure to me. So, Luca, let's just take a step back first and tell us why you wrote this book, what brought you to this album specifically.
There are many reasons, not only one, as it happens in these cases. And well, first, it's an overlooked album, even by Paul himself. Didn't have much recognition over the years. So I thought it's an interesting work. There's a lots of things that we don't know about the album. Why don't try to do something about it? And I think people like when you tackle something different and not the same old things, let me say. So for me, it was a kind of a challenge as well. I challenged myself and say, okay, I want to do something on Press to Play, which for me is an important album because it was the first album I ever bought being a conscious fan of Paul McCartney. Because when Press to Play was released, well, Pipes of Peace was released, I wasn't a fan of Paul McCartney. My mother came back with that record, but I was a Michael Jackson fan. So I didn't know much about Paul. So Press to Play was the first album I ever bought being already a fan of Paul. So for all of this reason made me think there's enough material to build a book on Press to Play. And the album has so many interesting sides that I'm sure it will be a blast.
Yeah.
For me and for the readers. And I'm very happy with the results.
Yes, certainly. And so you can buy this on Amazon.com. You can search it up on Google, and I'm sure it is widely available to buy.
Yep.
So
link below on
link and of
link-
course
yes,
the link below.
And again, let's just call the name of the book. Luca has called it That Unmistakable 80s Sound. And we're going to get into why is that sound so unmistakable and so 80s? Because if ever Paul Records had that 80s sound, it's Press to Play, right? With Hugh Padgham producing, coming off the huge success of Phil Collins and Genesis, and Paul wanting to always be at the forefront of being popular, what's current, and this is what he's always, which is what he does to this day. But he was doing it back then as a mid guy in his 40s, and a lot of people thought that he was past his prime then. That was clearly not the case, because my co-host loves this album and is like, wow, what a great record, what an original idea. And that is the spirit of why Paul made it.
So, Andy, why don't you take us back into when you first discovered this album, not critically, just first and foremost as a fan, and kind of where it stands in your ranking of Paul's albums.
Thanks, Kyle. I'll take, as I told Luca before we were off air, the CD version of Press to Play is the one I identify with. Now, Lucas says it was his first album, true album, that he remembers, and it was 10 tracks. But the CD era of the 90s, and collecting all of this stuff and getting all of Paul's CDs with bonus tracks was just what I was doing. And when I got Press to Play with all those extra bonus tracks, to me, that was like the album. I didn't even realize that as a 15-year-old, I didn't realize that, like, Right Away, Tough on a Tightrope, or It's Not True was not even part of the main album. Because I was young, I didn't realize that. So I grew up thinking all those tracks were like part of this fantastic album from 1986, not realizing that they were bonus tracks. So that, learning that those tracks were not on the album changed my perspective a little bit, to look at the album as Luca has when he first heard it, as just a 10-track album that is sonically so all over the place. It was one that has aged better with me. I think in the 90s, I was so caught up in like Flaming Pie and Flowers in the Dirt that it was easy to overlook as a teenager, especially in the wake of like the Anthology and Flaming Pie. 10 years on from Press to Play, that's an album that kind of really got forgotten then. Now here we are later, 30 years later, and people like yourself are like, look at this album. It's fantastic. I can see that now too, as somebody in my 40s going, you know what? There's been a lot of traction on podcasts for a long time about Press to Play. And Luca's book is coming out as the album is nearing its 40th anniversary. It was released in 86, but as Luca has documented in his book, 85 was when everything was recorded and produced and worked on. So it's really like a 40-year anniversary of the whole thing. One that I'm very much at peace with and consider very much on the upper echelon of McCartney's career.
Yeah, really well said. I really love the story of of you just being a teenager and not understanding. I really relate to that.
And let me add, Andy and Kyle, another reason why I wanted to do this book about it, because as Andy was saying, I've noticed that many people like the album, notwithstanding his bad commercial performance at the time. I realized that many people like the album, as we three, for example. But on the forums and stuff, it's a kind of divisive album. But there's many fans, and so I thought, it could be appreciated by many people.
Definitely, and I hope that it generates even more interest, and that those people like me, have the confidence to speak even louder its praises.
Kyle. Let me ask you about your first exposure to this album. When and where, and how did you discover it?
So I attribute so much of my exploration into the vast Beatles solo catalogs through podcasts, whether it was Talk More Talk or Two Legs or Things We Said Today. I would just listen, devour those episodes, and then somebody would mention a song here or an album there, and that was my homework. After I listened to an episode, I would actually go and listen to, not just what they're talking about mainly, but it's usually something they throw in on the side that catches my ear. And I'm like, oh, I need to go listen to that. And I throw on Press to Play, and I totally didn't get it. Even though Ken Michaels was like totally praising it, I totally didn't get it. And so I just had it in this stack of kind of like rejected records that if I'm like working and want to listen to music, then I don't want to listen to something that I like love too much, because then I'll get like distracted. But then I had on this record, and I think it was Talk More Talk, when I just heard these like thrashing double-tracked acoustic guitars just like on vinyl, just beautifully ringing in my headphones. And I just had to stop like everything I was doing. And I was like, this is in the wrong pile. This does not belong in the rejects pile. And then after that, I just would spin it again and again and again. And every time I listen, just hear more of those intricacies. And I'm excited to talk about where Paul is in his career that led to him being able to do all those overdubs, and find all those little gems that are really in like the periphery of the soundstage. I think that's why it makes for such a rewarding re-listening experience when you catch those things, even if it doesn't have the rockers that you quite want or the hooks that you think are as good as Wings. Like it's an album that rewards close listening for a man that's not only at a crossroads, but music itself is at a crossroads.
Right. The power of the video age, adapting to all that, which Paul had already done, really, starting back with Back to the Egg. But I mean, here's a man in his 40s now with competing with Madonna and Michael Jackson and everybody just killing it as the technology is evolving. And one of the things we talked about, I think it was on Two Legs, Luca, about the idea of using a video game as an analogy with the word press, which I thought was such a great take on it. Speak to more about that ideology.
Yeah, press to play. It can be linked to one of the main prompts of video games. And Paul was a big fan of Space Invaders at the time, and he was beating everyone else at the game at Air Studios. He was number one in the ranking. And so myself, when I was 8, 9, and 10, I spent ages on the video games. So I well remember. And so, but press is also something that could be related to the CD era, because at the time you got the turntable, but you got also the CD player. And myself, I got my first CD player in Christmas '86. So, and Press to Play was one of the first CDs I've bought. The first one was Give My Regards to Broad Street. And then after a few months, I discovered those 3 tracks Andy was talking about. And so I had to grab the CD as well. So yeah, I mean, press to play is a nice analogy with video games. There are also a couple of tracks that reminds me of this video game background music, and I think it's quite intentional from Paul's side to throw in something that is that reminds a bit of those background music, which is a form of art in itself anyway.
Yeah. For sure. So before we dig into the album proper, Luca, based on all of your research and everything, what would you say is kind of like the essential foundation to understand where Paul is in his career? Like I'm pretty sure he thought of this album on the evening before the premiere of Broad Street. So the 80s are just a complicated time for him. John is still fresh in his memory of his unfortunate passing. He has the success with Tug of War, not so much the success with Press to Play, and even less so with Broad Street. So does he? Yeah,
Michael Jackson buying the copyrights, like losing control of the publishing. It's a tough period, but like, why do you think Paul chose this moment to try to make a modern and fresh sounding album, given where he was at this point in his life?
After 3 albums with George Martin, he felt he needed a change. And as you were mentioning, Kyle, the commercial and critical success was dropping, definitely, because Tug of War was a big album. I think Tug of War sold something like 4 million copies, which is not, it's not an incredible amount of copies, but it was still a good amount of copies. Then Pipes of Peace was not really successful, especially in America. Then came Broad Street, which was his attempt at reclaiming the Beatles' legacy. Another thing that he needed to do, because John was shot in 1980, unfortunately, as we know, and then in the public um, eyes, in the public opinion, John was, the genius, and Paul was, uh, uh, hmm, I don't know, and so there was something that it was not fair to Paul. It was definitely not fair to Paul, and so I think this could have been prompted him to say, okay, let's make people remind what I have done in the Beatles,
Mm.
which is perfectly fine. I mean, you cannot criticize Paul for getting back to the Beatles catalog. That these were his songs, never uh, done, with a few exception, live at that point. Great songs like, I don't know, Here and Everywhere. Why why people uh, should have not been happy to hear a new version of Here, There, and Everywhere. I mean, so, but the film was not a great success. It had mixed reviews. Some were bad and some were good. Uh, but then it was something he needed to do, but he needed also a different path for trying to stay relevant. And the option he identified was Hugh Padgham. Andy
Mm.
was mentioning before, Hugh Padgham was producer number one, an engineer also at the time. Synchronicity by the Police, Genesis, Phil Collins. I mean, great sound. It could really compete with some of the sonic characteristics of the time, of the era, and so that was a right choice. So it was something he needed to do if you wanted to stay relevant, if you wanted to stay contemporary and trying to uh, do something important, commercially speaking, which is, by the way, uh, the main thing when it comes to Paul's music. Paul's music is conceived for commercial success. It's not done for uh, experimenting and not being uh, heard by people. He could experiment, but he wants to be successful at the same time. And this is an album where he experimented a lot. He tried different things. It was not a commercial success, as we said before, but it was such a bold statement, musically speaking, I think.
I agree with you, Luca. And I want to just also point out the fact that for this album, Paul felt like he needed a collaborator and a co-writer for 10 of the tracks with Eric Stewart of 10cc, who co-wrote, we're talking about the main album proper, 6 of the songs on the album. And that's the
Mhm.
most co-writes on a McCartney album proper ever. So the fact that maybe Paul was maybe doubting himself as a lyric writer at this point and brings in Eric Stewart to co-write 6 out of the 10 tracks is also something that needs to be kind of highlighted here. Again, self-doubt. Am I really good enough to be doing this stuff? This is a man who had a really big bang to the beginning of the decade with Tug of War. Okay, Luca said Pipes of Peace was not, very much critically successful, but Say was a huge hit, so was the video. Broad Street as a soundtrack was more successful than the film, we know. So he's still very successful overall, but maybe not. But again, critically, he was not very successful, and this was the problem. The sales were there, but critically, people are, the critics are just really, really just doing him in right now. And he's like, okay, I think I'm going to bring somebody in to help me co-write some songs. And I think that aspect of this record gets overlooked.
It's another important aspect. He definitely missed John, and he missed the songwriting partnership. So he knew very well Eric Stewart. They collaborated on Tug of War, on Pipes of Peace, on Broad Street. So he felt he could be a good choice. Um, and so writing songs with some people, um, it's very um, challenging, stimulating. So he felt he needed a push.
Yeah,
We
and I
know that.
also I also
Well,
noticed that a lot of the songs came out of jams. That the type of setup that he had for this record was kind of just let's hang out in the studio for like 10 hours a day if we can and just see what comes of it, you know. This is very different than his process in Venus and Mars, where he pretty much has all these songs written. He has the whole track list ready on that he made on vacation on a legal pad before he ever stepped into a studio. A lot of this came from just this play between himself and Stewart that led to even Talk More Talk started like a jam.
it's a combination of both things. So there were many songs already written. Uh, we all know that Paul likes to write songs while on vacation. So he wrote 5 tunes while in Jamaica um in early '85, including press. And then there were other experimental stuff done directly in the studio. Um, Pretty Little Head was a jam, was an instrumental jam for many months before they just came up with some ideas for the vocal part. But there was a jam. Talk More Talk was done in the studio in one day with Paul playing everything. So it's just a combination. Paul likes to do something different at some point, maybe after a couple of months in the studio working on songs. Then it comes a day when he says, well, let's try something different today. No um, um, no old ideas in the studio, no songs ready, just do something, let's do something different. And I think it's a good way to mm, alternating what you do in the studio, because the studio recording studio could be boring after after a while,
Mm-hmm.
so changing is it's always good. So coming up with jams, it's um it's a way to you know to to freshen your repertoire, what you're doing, and also for your collaborators, it's something nice to do.
And it's also worth mentioning, we keep talking about the studio. This is the first album recorded in Hog Hill Studio,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
I feel like there comes a time in every really prolific and established artist's life that they just get their own studio. And once you don't have time and money as much as a factor, I guess everything is time and money, but the fact that he just has his own space, his own instruments to just be there as long as he wants, do as many overdubs as he wants. I think that's also what gave way to a lot of the creativity in this record, that especially when you couple that with the dawn of these new computer technology to make music, now he again especially is not relying on experts, he's not relying on studio time, he can fall in love with the emulator and all of these drum machines and just be a mad scientist.
uh, it's something I have highlighted in the book. Having your own studio could be dangerous. Well, basically, he started from a financial point of view, because he said, well, I've spent so much money at Air Studios or Abbey Road that I could build my own studio with this money. And that's what he did. So they built a Hog Hill studio. They started in 1984. And by the time UPAGM came in, so April 1985, the studio was ready. The danger is that um, you don't have limits at that point, and that could be dangerous for music. Um, there's a sentence I have reported in the book. I can't remember the author. Um, that said, you need limit to become limitless.
Hmm. Interesting.
Well, you got 48 tracks, you got 96 tracks, whatever. That's a danger. You can really overproduce an album. You can really overproduce your ideas. Um, to be clear, I like the way Press to Play is built. Sonically is a delight, and for me is a delight because of this many nuances, because of this richness in instrumentation. But at the same time, um, the song remains key to any kind of uh, production. So first thing is a song. Um, so the album is definitely um, in two halves. Let me say there are great tunes that could have been even less produced, but there's a production which is very much of the era, which I find really fascinating. But again, having having a studio, it's not necessarily um, it's freedom, but it's also danger. You know what I mean?
Because how do you know when to say, enough? Having limits sometimes is
Let's
good
stop.
for an artist. Exactly. To say that's it. But it's Paul
Mhm.
McCartney. He has his own studio. And he's like, as Kyle said, almost kind of like in McCartney 2 mode when he was only in Scotland. Now he's got a full studio to do whatever he wants. And you're saying that, well, that could not necessarily be a good thing. But I think 40 years on, we can see that it was. And that's why somebody like Mr. Hand is like, look at this album and how
Yeah.
creative it is.
Right. Okay, so let's get into the songs proper. So we're just going to go track by track here. So it starts off very strong with Stranglehold.
Yep.
Luca, what should we know about Stranglehold?
Well, Strangle first thing is a co-write with Eric Stewart, and I think it's quite a departure from McCartney's familiar sound. It starts with these two acoustic guitars. There's some strong drums coming in. The vocals is almost whispered at the beginning, so uh, it's definitely different from the sound we knew from the previous albums, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a great lesson in dynamics, in the control that an artist can have, in the way that they kind of manipulate the flow, the crescendo of a song. Because I love his hushed tones in the verse, because it really pays off in the chorus when just the skies open up and
Mm-hmm.
those drums are just raining down on you, and it's very anthemic when he's just singing
Yeah.
Stranglehold. And it is a great introduction to this album because of it introducing the 80s sound
Yeah.
that we talk about. And I absolutely love this track.
Yeah. Agreed. It's definitely it kind of sets the mood for the album. Anthemic is a great way to describe it. I want to know more about you. It's you're
Mhm.
thinking you're hearing this and like, okay, this is going to be kind of a real rockin' album. It has
Yeah.
it has hit potential on it. We had Jerry Murata on Two Legs, who was the drummer on this album, and I know that Luca has spoken to him about it, and this was one of his favorite tracks too, and the video shoot for it as well. He had a lot of
Mhm.
fun with this track. But again, this is, I think, is a top. This, I mean, out of the 10 tracks on the album, this is a highlight for me because it has that kind of anthemic, kind of marching, boastful. But the album doesn't stay like that. It doesn't. It totally goes other
Yeah.
ways. But a good track.
Yeah, interesting thing is that it was the first track co-written by Paul and Eric
Yeah.
Stewart. It's the first track on the album, and it's the first track they recorded. So
Yeah.
Mm.
that was definitely something that Paul loved about the track, and I like this pulsating bass, the horns, the drums. We have highlighted the powerful drums of Jerry Marotta. It's
Mhm.
really the most powerful drums I think in the whole McCartney's catalog here.
Yeah, and I also a theme of this album that I kind of want to highlight is that I think a lot of people see this as Paul trying to be contemporary and kind of reaching into like a brand new toolbox of new sounds and everything. But there's a lot of times that I want to highlight times that it's very classic. It's very classical Beatles, right? Like there's the horns on it to me are reminiscent of like Got to Get You Into My Life, and not to say that it's quite at the same tier, don't come at me, but I think that it's still a familiar palette.
Oh, and there's your hot take, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. Clip that. But yeah, it's a very familiar palette.
I agree. Andy was mentioned in the title I chose for the book, that unmistakable 80s sound. In truth, the album is not only 80s sound. I mean, there's the 80s sound, but it was produced in the 80s, so it's quite obvious. Then there's ballads, there's great rockers. The sound of guitars is so hard. They are so hard sounding. So there's not only the 80s sound in the album. There's so many aspects that I have all dissected in the book, and so I chose the title because it sounds good, but as it happens frequently with Paul, there are so many things that within an album. So that's it, and we will see together during the episode what I mean.
All right.
So moving on to the next track here, if we're ready for that. So Good Times Coming / Feel the Sun.
Paul's classic. Let me take two songs and make one out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, Lucas, why don't you set up this one for us?
Okay, these two tracks were written in Jamaica, both. So the sunny theme was inspired by Jamaica. We all know that Paul loves Jamaica. So yeah, it's a medley. It works perfectly. I mean, the whole atmosphere of both songs is so sunny, so summery. I like very much this medley, especially the sound of guitars in the first half and in the second half. So different from each other, all played by Carlos Salomar, but so good. I've interviewed Carlos for the book. We had a long conversation last March, if I'm not wrong, and so he was able to go really in detail about his guitar work, and it's amazing. It does an incredible solo in the first half, and then he adds all those catchy lines at the end of Good Times Coming. Well, Feel the Sun, the second half. He adds all these lines. I mean, the guitar work all over the album is really something worth exploring to me. And there's the reggae rhythm in the first half, which is infectious.
As influences him, all the way back to the Wings days of going to, Jamaica and the reggae sound. Curiously here, as you noted in Music is Ideas, he recorded this on the roof of this.
Well,
wow.
I have talked with Hugh Padgham, who is in the book as well, and it was not really on the roof. It was just outside the studio. They just went outside. It was a sunny day, and Paul wanted to do something outside. The feeling. It's the old thing, the feeling. And so they just had the cables running outside, and he played the bass outside the studio,
Yes.
and that's it. And the other thing is that the intro part, when with the chorus of "Good Times Coming," that was recorded outside as well.
That's like fade in
With
of the good
yeah,
times
the
coming,
fade in, yeah,
times
with
coming
Jerry
in.
Marotta also
Yeah.
singing, and
Mhm.
the maintenance guy playing acoustic guitar. So there's lots of nice ideas and stuff within the song. We all know that "Feel the Sun" was recorded in a completely different version during the sessions,
Mm.
but then they, for some reason, they redid the track, and we can say that the original version was better. Definitely was it was a completely different track with this Hammond organ all over the place, but I like as well the version that is on press to play.
Yeah, I thought it worked out pretty well. Totally just takes the shift, boom, feel the sun shining, and just punches you in the face again. I mean, that first version was good, but I enjoyed this. I enjoyed the finished one.
The
But
backing vocals on "Feel the Sun," I think they are fantastic.
they are drenched in reverb and all that 80s production. You just hear it.
Yeah, I really like the difference between the effects on the vocals between "Good Times Coming" and "Feel the Sun."
Mhm.
It kind of feels like you would want to make a bigger contrast of like this half is the day, this half is the night, but it's kind of like they both are sunny, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting for a medley to be kind of almost too close like that, but still in his vocals, if you listen to it, like I think that the first effect for the for the first half of the song is like kind of that 80s sound a little bit. I know 80s sound is generally more like the gated drums and everything, but I can't quite describe it. It's just something very, if I were to really try and describe it, just something very slick and polished and almost like a little bit
Mm.
like too cool, but he just does it really, really well. But then when you get to the "Feel the Sun" part, again, McCartney's just a master at letting a song just like open up. And I think that there's just this effect that he has this more bluesy style on Feel the
Hmm.
Sun, that almost feels a little bit more like classic McCartney. That's a
Hmm.
great contrast to the more processed "Good Times Coming."
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's again just this sign of McCartney at a crossroads of always, he's trying to be contemporary but never losing his roots. So I think that this one is again just so creative. The guitar work throughout is incredible. The backing vocals. So and Paul liked this one enough to end up on Pure McCartney.
Absolutely worth, which is a compilation you love, isn't it? So much,
Yeah,
Kyle.
I have so many copies of it. I had to get rid of all of them. That's how many I had. Yeah, I had no more space.
Uh,
Oh,
we
Luke,
can
go
we
ahead.
can close. Maybe I can just quote Carlos Alomar. So also for the listeners and future readers of the book, what he said about the solo in the first half of the song, and he said, when the solo actually comes in, it disturbs the ambience, but
Hmm.
at the same time not get in the way of the whole. So it's delicate balance. The other thing I thought it's Paul McCartney. I'm not here to sort of give him a gigantic thing such as "let me overpower your track,"
Yeah.
which I think it sums up very well his work on the first half of the track.
And it's also worth mentioning that Carlos came in pretty late to the sessions, right? Everything was
Yeah,
mostly done, and then he was like, "Hey, see where you can improve it," and then
Yeah.
he
he
improved it quite a bit.
he was. Um, if I'm not wrong, he was one of the names that Upajam brought to Paul for guitars, but probably um, he had other engagements, or in the end they decided to have Eric Stewart playing the rhythm guitars or keyboards during the recordings, and then he was called intentionally, he said to me, for the overdubs. So that
Yeah,
was a kind of you know a kind of embellishing the tracks that were
Yeah.
already recorded.
I think that's another advantage of having Hog Hill in his own studio, because if the label was like, listen, buddy, your time's up, he would have just had to deliver the album as is, and maybe he'd have some more pull by being Paul McCartney. But
Sure.
this is just like, sure, we got, come on in, we got some more room on these tracks. So anything else? Ready to move on to Talk More Talk?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the one that for me, just, I love McCartney really reaching for something, trying something new. The spoken word in this track, that it happens in the beginning and the middle of the song. And he's not really trying to make like a grand statement. He just hears these kind of throwaway phrases in like a Tom Waits interview, right?
Yeah.
But to me, it just has this surrealistic quality that McCartney and Lennon have always loved, the surreal. And this and so it's Linda and his son James and Paul just having these weird, like, it's almost like a film score.
It is
just this, these like, big like organs, it feels like, maybe not exactly, but just these words floating around your head. And then it just comes in almost like this McCartney dance track, where his voice is just this higher register, where it feels like he's really yearning. And I don't know, I could go on about this track. I adore it. Andy, what do you think?
Clearly, listen, it used to scare the crap out of me. I used to hear the talking voices, and I'd be like, I can't listen to this. It's freaking
That is so
me out.
funny.
It's freaking me out too much. With these almost like kind of reminiscent of like what Paul did on Back to the Egg with the broadcast, like that kind of experimental stuff. I'm like, what is this track? And again, it took me probably till I was much older to appreciate everything that is going on in this song. But back then, I was like, this is an instant skip. Not anymore. I think it's clearly an experimental gem that Paul was brave enough and courageous enough to leave on the record in true Beatles fashion, right? But it's buried on an album from the 80s that nobody really liked. But that bravery, that awesomeness to just have the courage to say, I'm going to try to do this and put this, as you said, film score type of effect on this track. And then it kind of opens up into this kind of syncopated more talk stuff.
And the multiple voices.
The
registers.
And the critical stop. And then like hearing like the spoken word again. Very, very adventurous song. The one that I think works very well. And again, I forgot that his son was on the track. He was like, 10 years old? Not even. He was young.
Yeah.
And it's the namesake of Luca's book.
Music is ideas.
Yeah, it's been taken from this song. Let me just throw some nice facts
Please.
About the song. So first thing is that the engineer was not Hugh Padgham, but it's Steve Jackson. So we can guess that the track was not part of the Hugh Padgham session. So could have been done before, or it could have been done during the summer when they did the overdubs, and Paul had some time on his own, and he worked on Spies Like Us. So that's interesting. It's different from the rest of the album to my ears. Paul said that it was recorded in one day, basically. You mentioned, Andy, that it's kind of a jam. Let's look at the way it's built, because there's this gloomy intro with the keyboards. Okay, and then he tagged the song after this 1 minute of introduction, and the song is definitely based on the Pipes of Peace outtake. It's not on.
Yeah.
Which is it's interesting. It took me a while to really understand the similarities. So it's a jam, it's an improvisation, yes, but there was something already written that it took to work that day. But this is an example, Kyla, of what I was saying before. So at some point he was bored, maybe, or he was on his own. The musicians were not with him, and so he did something on his own, and he made up the track with all this strange kind of instrumentation. There's the emulator. Eddie Rayner was involved in the track and came up with lots of interesting uh, sounds. So I like the song. Uh, there's this uh, R&B gospel thing vocals by Paul.
Yeah.
So it's very nice. He sings the whole track, I think, in with two different parts.
And I think
And
that's really
so
what he gets from It's Not On, the higher, doing the like
Yeah.
super low
Yeah.
register with the right higher register.
Mm-hmm.
and then there are all these voices, all these phrases scattered through the songs. I have done some research on them, so I don't want to spoil it now. But I tried to uh, go to discover the sources of all these phrases. So
Mm-hmm.
for your pleasure as readers, you
Mm-hmm.
see.
Oh yeah.
I think that this song is really like a Rorschach test. It's a thermometer for, do you like this sound? If
Yeah.
you if you cannot stand this song, then you probably don't like this album. Because to me, I mean, I love this because I think that I'm really lucky, and I hope that a lot of people in my generation share this privilege of not being around for the 80s. Kind of makes me not feel like weighed down by this whatever 80s malaise that or sickness that people have. Like when I hear these drum machines, it's so interesting. It doesn't feel like overdone. I don't even have like the biggest knowledge for, top 40 songs in the 80s. So if you're saying if you're accusing it of being like somewhat derivative, I'm not even really bothered by that
Because
I
you
don't have
don't know
much
what
to
that
reference.
you have no reference to it.
Yeah.
Right.
To me, it feels very in line with McCartney's other artistry, right? Of when the drums are, yes, it's not like Ringo on a drum kit, right?
No.
Or our good friends Denny Sywell on a drum kit, but it's these little punches of drums going all dancing all around the soundscape where you just have McCartney's angelic vocals floating on top.
Mm-hmm.
And again, these guitars that just feels like they're run through a computer. And what makes it, I think, another part of this song being such an important like signpost of this album is like the making music with a computer. Back then it probably felt like the biggest like cheat you can possibly do.
Oh yeah.
Right. But today, with all the things that we can do, not even just gonna say the letters AI, and you know what I mean, right? But like this feels like you're trying to make music with like sticks and stones compared to what we have today.
Now,
Do
sure.
you see what I'm trying to mean? What I'm
Totally.
trying to say?
Oh yeah.
Like this still takes a lot of like craft and intentionality that people might have just thought that McCartney hit press to play and then just this drum machine came out
And made this manufactured thing when it was so hard to do.
Yeah.
Compared to what we have now. And of course, like, the synths and all that stuff that he was into, starting with McCartney 2 and experimenting through as he kind of went through the 80s, kind of comes to fruition on this album. Yes, he dabbled in it some years prior, but here's the time like where he can actually take his whole kind of mad scientist experiment and say, look, let me try to just program this keyboard to kind of come up with these sounds that work their way into it on tracks like this. It's actually when you compare to it, people think, oh, it's just cheating and it's compute. But now compared, like, think about it. It's actually really impressive.
Yeah, I read the word floppy disk in Music is Ideas, and I was like, okay, got it.
Mm-hmm. Again, you have like things like Kraftwerk. I don't know, Kyle, I don't know if you're familiar with Kraftwerk. I know that Luca probably is. You see where like it's kind of all derivative, where all this stuff was coming from at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Want to move on to Footprints?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Okay, so I want to start this. Okay, we're about 45 minutes into a podcast. This feels like a good time for a hot take. Okay, for those of you sticking around. Press to Play is one of the best acoustic McCartney albums. How does that make sense?
There's not much acoustic stuff on this album.
There's acoustic stuff all over this album. And I think that what's difficult is that because McCartney is doing the contemporary 80s sound with the drum machines and all the studio trickery, I think that it's easy to overlook all these acoustic guitars. They are produced beautifully. These acoustic guitars are crystal clear, and I think that if the McCartney camp ever wants to get really creative and like save this album, I think they make a stripped down acoustic version of it. And I think you see it in a whole new light. And I think Footprints is the first time that you get to see this.
I get what you say, Kyle. And we got to remember that the album started with Paul and Eric Stewart and their acoustic demos, which were kind of a problem for you, Pagem. You said that he didn't get them. But all the songs were played on acoustic guitars. So because they started on acoustic guitars, the collaboration was exactly based on that. Like
Right.
Paul did with John. You sit with your acoustic, and you're like in a mirror, and you come up with the songs. Then in the album there are acoustic things. Definitely. Well, Footprints is an acoustic track, although it's arranged in a very original way. With a Lindrum as a background. There's many synthesizer, lots of electric guitars. But we were talking about the acoustic guitars on Stranglehold.
Yeah.
So the basic track was recorded with 2 acoustics and a drum kit, no bass. Remember that Paul overdubbed the bass in all the tracks, except for maybe 1 or 2 tracks. He always overdubbed the bass.
Yeah.
So they
give me the underdubbed. They give me the press to play underdubbed.
Could you imagine like an acoustic version of "Move Over, Busker"? Come on, like that would be crazy. I would love it, but
so you both are probably out much, are more McCartney experts than I could dream to be. Can you think of another song where McCartney does a Spanish guitar solo?
Well, yes, there are other instances. There's Somebody Who Cares.
Yep.
Okay.
There's Some Days. There's a couple.
There's a few.
Well, it's a special thing when it happens, because I feel like McCartney being a bassist, you don't really, you can have, and there have been entire clinics about his bass lines, but you don't really think of him as being really nice with the guitar. And I really heard this for a long time and just figured he flew someone in to do these guitar solos. But the fact that this is him playing these Spanish guitar parts is just so impressive. He can do everything.
Oh, yeah. When it comes to Paul, you can have Paul within the first, 10, 5, 3 top bass player. But you have to list Paul McCartney within the guitarists. You cannot leave Paul McCartney out of a list of guitarists. Mm-hmm. Although he was not in the Beatles his primary instrument, but he composes lots of songs on acoustic guitar. Yeah. He did some great solos. I can go on. Taxman, whatever. Mm-hmm. So he's also a guitarist. Is a multi-instrumentalist. So it's not only a bassist.
And I think that's
a great guitar player.
That's kind of almost the Beatles' popularity working against them, that they're just in the popular imagination thought of as he's the bass player. And I think that you don't need to have a super depth of knowledge about the Beatles to know that, but I think that if you ask most people on the street, they're not going to know that McCartney is a acoustic guitar player.
Definitely.
No. Yesterday being an obvious one.
Here's a great example of his playing, and you wouldn't necessarily think that this is him just having, just playing this acoustic, beautiful track that to me has almost a classical feel to it a little bit.
Yeah.
Neoclassical feel to it a little, and in the arrangement of it. And again, the falsetto, again, a great
So
example of
beautiful.
falsetto singing on this song in particular, but on the album overall, it is a highlight on Footprints. And again, a track that took me a long time to warm up to, because it's just, it kind of got lost a little bit for me and everything. But to kind of listen to it on its own, I got a big appreciation for Footprints and all the work that went into it. And again, there's synths on it. I mean, there's everything on this song.
He's trying to mix the contemporary with the classical. And I think that if I'm going to try and pitch this album to people, it's to remember and try and see the more classical McCartney elements in it, rather than focus on the contemporary stuff you might not like as much.
Absolutely.
It's a gorgeous track. It's wintry atmosphere. The instrumentation I was talking before, perfectly built, perfect combination of modern instrumentation and classical instrumentation.
Yes.
And that was the last one they recorded with Pajem during the sessions of April, June. That was the last one. So they were forgetting about it. So fortunately, they came up and did the track with Jerry Marotta programming the whole Lindrum, which is a very nice backdrop.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Only Love Remains. McCartney album is not complete without a ballad, as he himself has admitted. And this one is really up there for one of the top McCartney ballads. Luca, can you set this one up for us? What do you want us to know about this track?
Well, this is the very last track recorded, because after the basic tracks were laid down, then there came summer overdubs and stuff, and late winter, maybe even spring '86, Paul has got one more song, and it was Only Love Remains. So they invited a small orchestra at Hog Hill studio, and they recorded piano, vocals, and the orchestra at the same time. Although they did a couple of takes separately. So that's the beauty of this track, the melody, the arrangement. Again, there's interesting touches on the song, like wine glasses played on the song, which remind us of the experiments he did on McCartney. The synth bass. Well, Paul doesn't play bass on this track. There's another musician playing synth bass. So again, a combination of classical thing and modern sounds, which is a constant throughout the album, and that's one of the thing I like most of it.
And speaking of the past, he's working with Tony Visconti.
Yeah, his old buddy, who he did not properly credit on Band on the Run, and Tony now is back working with Paul. I actually have a little bit of not as a hot take as Kyle always said, but I have a little bit of a hot take with this song.
Bring it on.
I wonder, as Lucas says, this was done very late and recorded very late, January of '86, right? Has Paul been recording these songs going, wow, I'm really kind of deviating from the norm of what I normally do. I'm about to release an album. Let me just throw on a good old McCartney ballad just to make it sing, and just to kind of let me go back into my comfort zone and just drop one of these classic ballads on here just to make everybody happy. So I'm not dropping an album that's so foreign that people go, what the fuck is he doing? Oh, there's McCartney right there.
That's a funny take.
Yeah, I think he kind of omitted it, because he said, well, many people say to me that Without a Ballad is not really a McCartney album. So I think he tested the waters, and then someone said, well, where's the ballad, Paul? And then he said, well, I got this song. let's take a risk, but not too much. something like that.
As you quote in Music as Ideas, Paul says people who heard the album say, "There's the McCartney I like." You know, when they hear the classic ballad, when they're not hearing these really experimental and creative tracks, they're like, okay, we're back in the safety zone of a McCartney album again, because we hear this beautiful ballad, orchestrated and clearly single potential all over it, remixed as well. Clearly one of the best ballads probably in McCartney's career. I would think most of us can agree to that, and closes side one for me on a high note.
Well, I've got a question for you guys then. I really like that story and that context, but to me, it kind of seems like McCartney is conceding on his vision for a truly weird album. And I love this album because it's weird. I will never take off Only Love Remains. I adore that track.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, like Flowers seems like the more commercial album, right? Like, do you think he hangs on to this for 3 years and then puts it on Flowers instead? Could it have, if he thought of it a little sooner, could it have been better served on Pipes of Peace? Like, do you think that he should have really stuck to his vision and put on, I don't know, Tough on a Tightrope, or Love This House?
Right,
It's Not True.
Right.
Like we know that he had no shortage of like songs of
stuff.
this ilk.
Right.
No, I think he needed to have the song Only Love Remains on the album because of the lyrical content. Mainly the lyrical content is very interesting. Well, let's take the opening. And if you take your love away from me. So that says very much about what was going on in his life at the time. And he admitted in a Rolling Stone interview at the time that he went through some issues with Linda, as is normal for all the couples. But it was kind of bold for him to admit it in an interview to Rolling Stone. I mean, you can overlook these things, or maybe talk only about the music or whatever. And so I think the lyrical content is very interesting. I've analyzed this quite in depth in the book. So this is a very meaningful song for Paul.
No doubt.
I see. I appreciate it being autobiographical in that sense, because a lot of this album does have a theme of absurdity where it's very obscure. He's like, he even admitted in the next song we'll talk about, Oklahoma is never like this. Like, he's like, that was a placeholder lyric, and then it kind of just stuck, and now I'm like, what do you think it means? So that is what a lot of the lyrics that we get in this record. And so for this one to be personal, it's it's an important element of the song. But I still stick to my point that, do you really need to squeeze in a ballad just for people to like it? I think that's just that's when Paul, I think, is a little too concerned about the commercialism. But I accept that is who he is.
That's who he is. That's who he is, and he's like, he always is going to want that appreciation. He does. He gets hurt. He can't stand bad reviews.
I mean, I know that we have the advantage of hindsight. But I'm saying, if this album is going to tank critically anyway, put on Love This House. Yeah. Right?
Put on Lindiana or something.
Yes, right? Please.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, let's talk about Press.
Oh, baby. Let's talk about Press.
This one is just raucous. This one is fun, synth pop, pure 80s. But again, McCartney doing it right. Obviously, the music video is amazing, but that's just
a couple. There's the one that was recorded at actually Hog Hill, cheapest video I've ever done. And then the one.
Oh yeah.
No.
I mean, the one on the tube.
Oh,
amazing.
Probably one of the best Paul McCartney videos of all time. Would you gentlemen agree?
Yeah, for sure.
Press.
So fun.
So enjoyable. It's so enjoyable. Yeah, I agree. I have fond memories of this video when it was shown at the time, and it's it was not. It contributed. Well, the song went to number 21 in the US, which was not so high, but at the time it was not a bad placement.
Top 40.
And
Top 40 song.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the video contributed to a good exposure.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
Look at. Oh,
it's
sorry.
better. Go ahead, Kyle. Go ahead.
How else do you want to set up this song?
Well, this song, I like this song. I mean, there's many things to say, so I will stick to a couple of thoughts. Well, there's a nice contrast because the side one, I'm speaking about the LP, obviously. So all the things, guys. So side one ends on a romantic note with Only Love Remains, and sides two, well, there's sexual love here. well, the sexual love. I mean, Paul wrote a song after an experience in Jamaica, and Linda gave him a message, and then we can imagine whatever we want to imagine. But there's certainly a kind of a sexual urgency in the song. Tell me to press, the lyric is suggestive. It's suggestive, and it's another side of Paul McCartney that we all love. We love Paul, the romantic one, and we love the Paul when it's a little bit more risque in his lyrics. And then there's this vast array of guitars all over. Well, it starts with a guitar treated with a digital delay. Then there are other guitars by Carlos Salomar, and then there's the solo, which is Paul McCartney on solo guitar, guys.
On solo guitar, right?
Yeah,
which is a fantastic rocking solo.
So before we get to the music, I just want to touch on what you mentioned about the sexual part of it. I mean, obviously, this has always been part of Paul. I mean, obviously, the 50s rock has a lot of sexual innuendos. And then even in the 70s, I mean, skipping over all the Beatles in the 60s, which, has a lot of that as well. But in the 70s, Hi, Hi, Hi comes to mind. When he's like, I'm hit you with my polygon, right? So this is not new to him, but I'm just wondering, do you think that the 80s, not being super educated about the 80s, do you feel like Madonna and like Prince, do you think they kind of like made kind of like being overly sexual kind of like in vogue more so, and Paul is trying to fall on that theme?
Yes, I would agree with that. And
it kind of speaks to the cover image a little bit too. It's very sensual. It's not quite, bearing, your skin. Like it's obviously the George Hurrell, like 30s style shot here, but it still is that same very like sensual, not shying away from it, kind of as, people might have done in the past.
Paulie is always like to push the envelope with his lyric writing. People want to paint him in this box as a choir boy and not pushing the envelope with his lyrics, as you just pointed out with Hi, 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 because he likes to push the envelope a little bit in a subtle way with his lyrics. And Press is just another example of that, as Luca and you guys have just pointed out. But he's doing it with a little cheeky smile and going, ha, 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 that kind of thing.
Well, and so the music itself, I mean, is just so awesome in this. Like what you said with the delayed, the digital delay. I think that this is kind of a sister song to Talk More Talk, where I think Talk More Talk is a little bit more on the experimental, moody type of side, but Press is like pure pop, but using the same ingredients. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I have highlighted in the book that the song seems simple, but in truth, you can break it down in 4 different parts. So even in the simplest of pop songs, Paul really does fantastic things. So that's another of the aspects I enjoyed in writing the book and discovering things myself. So breaking down the songs in all of their parts, the harmony and stuff. There's so much to discover into this album.
Oh, love it. A killer vocal delivery. I never, this is one of those songs I never get tired of listening to ever. It's infectious. It's funny. It's exciting. I mean, the MVP loves the press to play video. Whenever we're watching Paul McCartney videos, she's like, "Put on press." I never get tired of it
So
because you can
good.
see Paul being himself in it. It's crafted so well, and it's creative, and it's fun, and it's something unlike nothing he's ever done, and it's the centerpiece of the whole album. It really is. For everything experimental that we talked about on side one, the build and the kind of atmospheric, kind of cinema type stuff, you get down to it. Here's like a song drenched in 80s production, the 80s style, as Luca has talked about. And he's opening up side two with the focal point of saying, look, here's this album basically in a nutshell. All of it. The reverb, the drums, the experimental stuff. It's all packaged in this 4.5-minute single.
Yeah.
Like it or love it. I don't know. Or hate it.
And I know that also a big story of this album is the battle between Hugh and Paul, of Hugh saying, well, I'm the hit maker right now, and Paul saying, well, I'm the boss. And I think that you could really accuse this album of being just like 80s for the sake of 80s if you just had some washed up 70s musician just say like, all right, what do I got to do to get on the radio this year?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what this is at all. Paul is just very interested in the contemporary sounds. And I think that what you get in a song like Press to Play is still mastery. It's still control over these sounds. So it's not just like 80s for the sake of being 80s. You really hear, and I think, of course, the mastery, I don't really need any more of an example than the inner sleeve to hear of, Paul writing these diagrams out to show you exactly how he wants to paint the sonic picture.
How does he want to paint? Yeah. How is he showing it to us?
So it's really, I think that the reputation of this album and Press being the biggest example is he's just phoning it in just to be part of this scene. But I think that he's still very on his game, and you get the same, Sgt. Pepper Paul that you got all the way back then in Press.
Well, I think a lot of that manifests itself in the next track, but let's let Luca have the last word.
Yes.
This.
Yeah, there's always two halves. Paul definitely wanted a different sound, but at the same time, this album is not so commercial. He said we were trying to be anti-commercial on the album, and the next track, Pretty Little Head, it's the best example maybe of this.
Absolutely. It really is. I think it is. I think it's, and we might as well move into Pretty Little Head and all of its Beatle-like qualities, experimentalism. I mean, listen, again, I'm thinking of the video first, right? Clearly, Paul is channeling Sgt. Pepper era Paul. You watch the video for this, what do we hear? The opening strands of She's Leaving Home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm just going to state it off the record right now. The remix single is the best version of this, not the one on the album. Luca, I think you agree, right?
Yeah, definitely. This was a jam, so that's another example of what they were doing in the studio sometimes to break the routine. So he said it's a crazy track, but on purpose. so Paul played drums during the sessions, and Jerry Marotta played vibes, and Eric Stewart was on keyboards. I made some research while I was doing the book, and apparently Paul played a digital drums on this song, which was Jerry Marotta's Dynacord drums. So now we're not getting into the technicalities of this, but that's one of the many nuances of Press to Play. The instrumentation is so layered, is so varied, there's so much to discover. So really, guys, I have discovered myself things I'd never imagined
In this song?
In this album. So by writing the book, I have learned and discovered many things, and Pretty Little Head is one of the best tracks to me. There's the sound of guitars, which are a little bit low in the mix is outstanding to me.
It's like you've never heard a guitar sound like this before. It sounds more like a toy, but in still just like a very like twisted again soundtrack type way. I mean, here's another hot take for you guys. Is Pretty Little Head the first Fireman song?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Another thing I notice is this reference to the video games. To me, Pretty Little Head has got all these little hooks,
Mm,
which is really reminiscent of the video games.
mhm,
Little um hooks that you can hear. So there's so many hooks in this song.
I
So
mean,
many.
Ursa Major, Ursa Minor coming out through the whole thing. I mean, like, it's what does that mean? But it doesn't it doesn't matter, you know.
yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's just part of the whole thing. I mean, it's the and then you listen to it lyrically, it's about just don't run away. It's about the story of a girl running away and blah blah blah. Don't you worry your pretty little head. It's a story and a movie and everything all in one when you think about the song.
Paul said about a hillman that it was kind of I don't know, a tribe or whatever. He had a passion for ancient Egypt, and so he tried to came
Yeah,
up with something invented by him, which reminds me a bit of bogey music
a little
to
bit.
some extent.
I could hear
Uh,
that. I mean,
but
and as you write in the book here, he called it initially "Back to Pepperland" was the working title of the song.
apparently is what Jerry Marotta said. So yeah, maybe working
Which,
title doesn't mean anything, but you know,
which, if I may say, this is why I'm going to segue to my co-host here. He calls Press to Play Paul McCartney Sergeant Pepper, and I
Right.
yeah, yeah.
understand it. Kyle, go.
No, I think that this is another track that if you love this song, you're gonna love this album. If you don't like this song, then this album might not be for you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Paul just using the studio as his instrument, and he's trying to paint a picture with sound that's again just not very direct and in your face like a pop song. It's more, I called it Fireman because it's a little bit more like ambiance like that, and like the chanting of Pretty Little Head.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it sounds like ancient Egypt, just something very like bestial. Not, I mean, gosh, that sounds terrible, but you know what I mean. Just like something primal. Primal is what I
Yeah,
want to say.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine being like a 12-year-old girl who sees the video of Press and is like, "Mommy, Daddy, I want this for my birthday."
Right.
And then she gets the album, Press plays, and the next one on the album is Pretty Little Head. You'd probably be so disturbed.
It's true, and I do wonder why the artistic decisions to, you hear the album version, and his vocal is so drenched in echo, right,
Mhm.
and reverb, and it's okay, but then when you listen to the remix by John Pertoker,
Mhm.
and his vocal, it's a single vocal, and I think it's a one track, and it's a night and day difference. You're hearing, I mean, it's like 7.5 minutes, that remix, which I think is, for me, is the go-to version. But I just wonder why Paul felt like he had to bury his vocal delivery on Pretty Little Head, drenched in all this reverb, when he sings that beautifully on the remix version when it's remixed into a single track. He could have. I wish he had the courage to say, "Listen, my vocal is a killer. Like, I'm delivering this killer vocal on this track, but I'm not going to hide it and drench it in echo." I just wish he had a little more confidence.
I don't know if it's a problem of confidence. The remix and the album version are two different songs.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be clear about it. And on the album version, my opinion is that Paul wanted just to sound different.
Yeah.
Not necessarily he wanted to hide the vocals. He wanted to sound different. But then when you hear the clean vocal, you can say, well, Paul, I like it so much. I understand.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it probably would have kind of rode the wave of press more if he did that natural vocal.
Yes.
Because as much as I love this fireman-esque kind of ambiance, almost like a Brian Eno style song with this version of Pretty Little Head, it brings the energy down that the merits of Move Over Busker and Angry cannot save.
No.
I think the reason this is my favorite album of all time is largely due to side one. And
side one, not so much side two.
And I think that I like 3 out of the 5 songs on side 2 a hell of a lot. And I think that Move Over Busker and Angry, I can't really save them. I mean, I think that I try and think of albums more so in terms of like major songs and minor songs that, for a few like incredible life-changing, world-changing albums, every song is a major song. Every song's amazing. But I think that you can't, for me, I try not diminish a song's, merits or reputation just based off of a few songs that were clearly not like the centerpiece of the song. And you get that with Move Over Busker and Angry.
Yeah, and I like that you're kind of segueing these two together. Move Over Busker is a song that lyrically, it's like a dialogue and exchange. I like that kind of delivery. I saw Errol Flynn wearing it. I kind of like that, but I mean, it's okay. And Angry, I'm on the record for. Angry is a song you put Pete Townsend, Phil Collins, and Paul McCartney in a room, and that's what you get.
I wish I never knew that. I wish they hid that fact from everybody,
God.
just so people could be like, yeah, that's like a mediocre McCartney track. But instead you're like, you had who in the room?
And that's what you kind of get up with. I mean, out of the two, I'll take Move Over Busker anytime because it's just, you got to come and it's a fun track.
Yeah.
I could definitely tolerate it a little bit more than Angry. Luca, if you want to kind of give us your take on these two tracks, because
let's take them at once.
I are kind of both on the same page with these.
I would take Move Over Busker as well, unless Angry is a remix version, because the remix version with the horns, it's another thing that would have deserved to be on the album. The remix version of Angry with the vocals, which is way up, with the bass more prominent, and the horns is fantastic. The album version is a bit different. So yeah, I would choose between the two. Move Over Busker. Little nugget for the listeners. Eric Stewart played piano on Move Over Busker.
Oh,
there you go. So I mean, I don't know about you guys. I'm eager to move on to the finale of this record.
Do it.
I think that if we're going to talk about, this would be a great idea for a show. Andy, let us know in the comments if you like this. The best songs to close out McCartney albums, or just any Beatles solo album, however absurd is up there for me. I love this song. Part of the reason that I love this album is because I love this whole period. We referenced Return to Pepperland, and I guess we didn't mention it by name yet, the Pizza and Fairy Tale tapes.
Oh, yeah.
So I adore those songs. And this one, I believe, comes out of those. I think those are on. This is on Pizza and Fairy Tales, or no? Do you know?
I believe it is.
Yeah, because I just think that this is just, again, the best of him trying to use that 80s sound like to his advantage. Like the way that his vocal is so processed in like this pre-chorus where he says like, something's come between us. Like I love it. For some reason it doesn't make it sound overly like robotic or computerized or anything. It makes it sound more yearning. McCartney knows what the emotion is and how to direct all of his tools to lift that emotion that he's trying to get you to feel. I think the drums on it really just, again, make it feel like this throbbing, again, almost like ancient primal feel to it. I think it's a beautiful conclusion to this album that, again, just doesn't shy away from the sound. It uses it as part of his new palette.
I think, in a way, as I pointed out in the book, contains, if not all most of the characteristic of Press to Play this song, because
Yeah.
we have this certain hard edge in the sound, so the guitar and the drum sound, very powerful. There's a psychedelic touch. You were
Yes.
mentioning the vocals and the
Mhm.
piano as well.
Mhm.
Also, the bass is very treated. And lyrically, there's this insistence on the theme of being meaningless. I mean, this is a theme that I have explored and highlighted through the book, which is a nod to surrealism that McCartney
Yeah.
had always liked. And so we can find this on However Absurd, or on Only Love Remains, on Talk More Talk. So there's definitely a common thread on Press to Play, lyrically speaking. Great track, definitely great track. And I think you were mentioning, Kyle, uh, the part "Something Special Between Us." Well,
Mhm.
this is the best middle eight of the whole album. I
Yeah.
really love this middle eight. There's a there's a an incredible musicality on it. It's deep, lyrically speaking. So
Do you do
another
you,
fantastic track.
do you guys think that the the overtly kind of Lennon-esque style is over the top? Is it like, can you hear it and go, that's like very John Lennon? Because I know it gets associated as a very Lennon type style um song. Do you guys, does that pop at you, or is it more just like Paul being kind of just going back to the Walrus period Beatles, or do you think it's like an over the top Lennon type delivery?
I don't think the Lennon is in the delivery. I think it's more so in the theme, the fact that they both loved the absurd, and that's kind of what
Yeah.
was able to especially keep them, I think, tied together in the later Beatles days,
Yeah.
especially. Where do you hear it in the delivery?
I just in his I just hear it. I mean, you have to play it. I mean, obviously we'll drop it in below. You hear it custom made. Like it just sounds like it would be something that John sings on Magical Mystery Tour. To me, that's what I hear.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Andy. And in the interview with Jerry Marotta, he said this. It was a kind of avant-garde song, very reminiscent of Sgt. Pepper's.
Yeah.
To me, that song is very Lennon. Was a bit of a tribute to him. It was not a typical McCartney song, but kind of funky, strange, but very interesting. So even Marotta sensed
Sense
something
that.
in the way the song is was done in the studio, in the lyrics and stuff. So I agree with Andy and
I'll have to
Jerry.
give it another listen. I really never heard much Lennon in
Oh
it.
yeah, I've heard that for a long time, and he chose to close the album with the main album proper
Mm,
with However Absurd, kind of like, okay, I'm gonna just close it with this whole kind of '80s retro vibe, kind of experimental sound, and leave you with this little nugget of like where he was going at the time. Of course, Return to Pepperland is recorded right around this, so this is kind of he's looking back at that period in this time of his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
and the very end with the orchestra, which plays randomly, random
Yeah.
lines and stuff.
Yeah.
Again, it's a
Day in the
nod
life.
to surrealism and stuff. And yeah, very powerful ending to the album.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that will sum up our take with Press to Play. As you can read more about this in Luca's brand new book, that Unmistakable '80s Sound, available everywhere now. Luca Perasi, thank you for being here again on Hands Across the Water.
Thanks to you, Andy. Kyle, it was a fantastic conversation. I'm happy to hear your enthusiasm about the album. So it's refreshing also to hear Kyle's take on it, different perspective from mine and from Andy's one. So Press to Play is well represented here. So it is worth an archive collection, dear Paul.
Absolutely.
I
It is.
I would do terrible things to make this happen.
We would do terrible things. Yes.
I would do terrible. If Paul sent me an email, it was like, listen, Kyle, you're not gonna like this, but if you want Yvonne's the one to come out, you're gonna need to do what I say.
Oh, we didn't even touch upon that. Mr. Yvonne's the one. You said it to the man himself.
Yes, yes, I did.
Ago, which also
yes.
this,
so that I think we'll have to do another episode on remixes and albums or cuts that didn't make the album. So
there's so much material from the era. So
totally.
That's it.
Well, thanks again, everybody.
Thank you
for sticking around. Make sure to check out Luca's book. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Tell us how you feel about all of this in the comments, and see you next time.
Bye.